The presenting sponsor for OnEducation is Schoology. Every day, millions of students, parents, faculty, and administrators from more than 1,600 school districts leverage Schoology to advance what is possible in education. The team at Schoology is passionate about making its users successful, and they know sometimes you might need a little help to achieve your desired outcomes. To help districts find their way to success, Schoology has created Schoology Compass, a set of self-service resources and tools to support school and district leaders in their journey to success. Compass is made up of 5 district success routes. Each one is designed to advance what is possible at your district. To learn more about Schoology Compass, simply visit Schoology.com.
Buddy, there's never a dull moment with this. Welcome to OnEducation. I'm Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glen Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We will discuss the Remind app and Verizon battle, how classrooms are resembling arcades, new research on screen time, the LA teacher strikes, and our guest this week is Phil Stubbs, CEO of Verso.
Jeez, so much going on.
It's a lot. It's quite an introduction.
Did we do an OnEducation Now this week?
Yeah, on Monday.
On Monday.
But that's it. Yeah.
So much going on.
Yeah, it's a ton of different content here, just a variety of different educational topics. Of course, with the LA teacher strikes, that being kind of the lead story right now in education.
Yeah. I loved what was your first take on the Gillette commercial? What was your right off the bat when you saw it? What did you think, just top of mind? I
didn't understand what the outrage was about.
Right.
But I guess that makes me a liberal.
Yeah, no, for sure. But did you see it after reading about the outrage?
No, you sent something to me, a text or something about.
I put it on Facebook.
Yeah. And then I was actually at parent-teacher conferences, and my coworker and I watched the video together before. All I read was some kind of controversy, and as we watched the whole video, we just looked at each other and said, "So what's the controversy here?" And really, I guess if this is a controversial topic to you as a male or female,
you're the target of the ad.
Then something is wrong. Exactly. It's actually really empowering, like you had put maybe on Facebook or wherever it might be, for us to take a look at ourselves as men, as fathers, brothers,
right,
and really about how we're going to, move forward. As far as how we treat women, how we raise our kids. Mm-hmm. And just kind of what's right and what's wrong, and kind of really calling those things out. That's what I really liked about the commercial, is at the end, they really do stand up for all of these different situations and make a difference, which, how could you be angry about that? I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. I saw a couple interesting takes on this. The one that I like the most is that this isn't a commercial about masculinity. This is a commercial about toxic masculinity, and they aren't the same thing. And you can be proud to be a man, quote unquote. You can be proud to be masculine without being all of the things that are associated with what's a problem. I'll acknowledge that I think the word masculine has become a negative.
Oh yeah.
And that's, to be honest, I'm fine with that, in the sense that, it's become a negative because it's been associated with the negative things that males have historically done. But I saw, related to that take, was this really cool meme that showed up where it had pictures of people like Lin-Manuel Miranda and Terry Crews and these men who are every bit masculine, but demonstrating their masculinity in good ways, honorable ways, awesome ways. I wouldn't want to stand in front of Terry Crews on any day and tell him that he wasn't masculine. You know what I'm saying? So, go ahead and try that. I mean, good luck to you. But so you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
there are ways to be. I think the best way men can be men is by teaching their boys. One of the best ways, by teaching their boys how to be respectful and honorable to everybody.
Yes.
And I mean, we are both fathers of boys.
Yes.
And I got teary eyed. Like I broke down. Like I thought about it, and I was like, man, I hope I raise my boys to be, the best human beings they can possibly be.
Absolutely.
And it's hard work, man. I tell you, it's a lot easier to raise your kids to be little brats. It is.
Well, that doesn't take any work. I mean, it
takes no work.
Society is going to, at least current society is going to lead them in a specific direction. And that direction, a lot of times, is not a good direction. So it takes parenting, and it takes standing up and really telling them right from wrong, and showing them too how we act towards our spouses, how we treat other people. That's the real true test, is they can see it, the way that we are reacting to things, and that's what they're going to emulate. And before, as they grow up, because you're right. I mean, it doesn't take much to raise kids who aren't very nice people.
No, that's the easy way out.
Yes, absolutely.
So, I mean, hopefully, I'd like to think that a lot of the people listening to this are working really hard at their careers and their jobs, and are trying to be, in particular, the best educators they can be. And so in the end, I just pray that, they're also putting that same amount of effort into being the best parents they can be as well.
Yes.
Because I mean, it's really hard work being a parent and being a good parent. And so like, it's funny because on that Facebook post where I posted, I replied after that, right? Yeah. With like, I wanted to call out the awesome parents of boys that I know. Because again, I respect that people are putting in the work, and there are a lot of you and a lot of fathers I know that are working their asses off to be awesome parents to their boys and teaching them how to be proper people, not just proper men, but, human beings that are amazing.
Yes.
And we do more of that, and we're going to right the ship that we're currently sinking in, I suppose.
It's quite a ship too.
So switching gears, I guess this has been a bit of a roller coaster. This Remind versus Verizon thing.
Yes.
Go through what's the deal with this? What's happening with Remind? This is a pretty bad situation for them.
Yes, I mean, if you don't know what Remind is, it's probably the most widely used app. Service, I guess it would be, by teachers, students, and their parents to basically do communication that's safe. What it does is it solved a problem that teachers had, basically, of being able to communicate with parents in a safe way, and students, without having to give away your phone number.
Right.
Because we know that can turn out all kinds of bad ways. If you're having those types of communication with text messages, for example. So they solved this problem, and they are not only the number one company, but they're basically the only service. We started actually looking at our school district for alternatives to this, and there really isn't any, because they dominate the space. And not only do they dominate the space, but it's free. Right. So you can sign up for it and use the service for free. And what's happened is Verizon, which is I guess the biggest phone carrier, at least that's what it seems like in the United States.
I think so.
Yeah, in the United States, had decided that because of the amount of text messages that were being sent, basically from Remind, that they needed to go ahead and charge. Kind of that for that service. And because Remind is free, they saw this basically as kind of, this is a non-starter. Like they would bankrupt their company.
I think it's terrible that we have to actually look for new services. Like this is screwing Remind pretty bad. Like they're a legitimate company, right? And
Yes.
and now you have people looking for alternatives just because Verizon's messing them around.
Yeah, and I mean, there, like I just told you, there really is no alternative to a text-based service like this. When you look down the list of the alternatives, it's basically a web app solution. And the problem is that we have many parents that don't have smartphones. And I mean, as weird as that might seem to some people, there's still quite a few people that do not have smartphones, and they have just the text messaging, like old school way. And they need those text messages sent to them when there's a update or a thing that says, hey, we're going to arrive at 5 p.m. Make sure you're drop off your students at this time, etc. So many back and forth conversations that happen with this specific thing.
So hopefully they figure this out. Hopefully they sign this contract and the deal gets done, and
yes,
they are able to actually not get charged for all this stuff. And I know that I had tweeted about it happening in Canada as well. Apparently Bell and Rogers are both also planning on charging Remind.
Wow.
So it's coming at them from multiple directions. So we'll see if it's actually, if hopefully Bell and Rogers see what's going on with Remind and Verizon and, follow suit, because it could be a real problem for Remind all across the board, I guess. We
do have, though, Mike, there's a solution, of course, that people figured out, kind of a backwards way to hack the system, if you want to call it that way. And we can post this kind of thing online or with our account. And basically, we'll post an article. Somebody wrote kind of how to go about tricking the system into making sure that they actually sends out a text message, even though you sign up with an email address through SMS. So we'll post that link in our either on Twitter or whatever it might be to this blog post. But it does work. We did a trial run on it. We signed up with a fake account. We put some kind of follow the instructions and then had it send it out, and it sent it as a text message, as SMS text message. So it's not actually super difficult to sign up. The only problem is that we do all of these signups for Remind at the beginning of a school year. Yeah. So we have all of our parents and we teach them how to log in, blah, blah, blah. They sign up and then they join these specific groups, the activities, and then they get these messages, but now they have to re-sign up and then change that specific, the phone number into this kind of email address / phone number hack that someone figured out how to kind of go about, kind of skirting it, and then using the SMS function on our, the ability to be able to do that.
Wild. Mm-hmm. So also coming across our screens this week was this really funny article that I guess when you posted it, I think you posted it first on Facebook, and I didn't really add some nuance to my response. And the article's title was U.S. classrooms are starting to look more like arcades, and I just wrote, I'm fine with that. Deep cutting insight, I guess, from me. But it actually is a pretty decent article, and it gives some shout outs to some pretty smart people. I talk about the Quest for Learning, Quest to Learn school in New York all the time. They actually wrote basically a turnkey school curriculum. Yeah. They open sourced their whole curriculum so that if you wanted to start like a private school or something, you could literally basically pull their whole curriculum and open a school. So I looked through that at one point, which I thought was really interesting. But I mean, this is all stuff we kind of know, right?
Yes. I mean, it talks a variety of different things, using gamification actually. And I don't know if they actually know the difference between gamification and game-based learning, but they describe game-based learning also in the article itself. And I think it's a great thing. We talk about this all the time as far as things like Classcraft and being able to use that in your classrooms, and how much more engaged your students will be and buy-in into your class and how you could still use your specific content to be able to teach, yet be able to layer these game elements in your classroom just to make it more fun. And not only make it more fun, but engaging and really get some buy-in from our students.
Anything that makes games-based learning more mainstream, more part of the regular news, is something I'm for. Yes. So, I mean, if the parents come across this article and go, this sounds really interesting. Maybe I'm not going to be such a jerk when my kids play Minecraft at school. Right?
Yes.
I'm for that. Maybe these teachers know something about educating my kids after all.
Yeah, maybe
because they read an ABC, right? Because they read this ABC News article and they go, now it's legit. That's good. It's fine. It's great. I love that they talked about things like characters and different powers and abilities and all this fun stuff that kids love to be a part of when they're learning. We know this. We know this because Classcraft is crushing it right now with this exact same stuff, with the rules and the achievements and the XP and all that stuff. So anything that makes this more mainstream and commonly accepted is good in my books. It was a pretty good article.
Yeah, we'll make sure we link it there.
Yeah, for sure. The reason why I said screen time is because the next article is about screen time. And this article we read was talking about the idea that instead of, backing our kids out of screen time, let's lean into the fact that our kids live in a world full of screens. And instead of, shunning them, let's just figure out how to use them smarter and use them better and be better with them. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely.
We talk about this all the time, and you just say the best thing that we can do that has to do with screen time or just being in a digital citizen is making sure that we're there to guide them instead of saying you can only have a certain amount of time on the screen. That's almost practically impossible now in a one-to-one kind of environment at school. So you have to say, hey, what are we actually doing on these things, and be a parent where I took it also too as kind of like literally leaning into their screen and saying, what are you working on? Tell me, show me what you're doing, or participate in whatever they're doing, like we do as far as with our kids, if they're actually playing games, and say, hey, is this appropriate for you? Do I need to, say, no, we are not going to be doing this, and here's why, teaching moments and those kinds of things. Instead of saying, hey, you have 2 hours, I'm going to step away. The little timer goes off, boom, it's done. You always talk about this too. It's just saying, just make sure you're managing these things, and then saying, use them responsibly, and making sure that you understand as a parent, what are they actually doing on there?
Right. We don't want to blow a lot of the content on this stuff because so the article that we're talking about is an interview with the awesome Jordan Shapiro, who is actually going to be on the podcast coming up in the next couple months. We're making those arrangements now, and it's in relation to his new book. So we're going to get a copy of the book. We're going to do some reading. We're reading a lot of books now. we're getting at least, I think, 3 books in the next little while, in the next couple months, 3 or 4 books to read. We got to do a lot of reading, Glenn.
That's great.
And then talking to authors, which is, I think this is where we belong in terms of talking to people. So it's going to be exciting. So we're going to talk to Jordan when he comes on the podcast after we get a chance to take a look at his book. But I mean, again, this is all seems like pretty common sense to us. It is stuff that we've been talking about for quite a while. When we come back, we're going to talk about the strikes in particular going on in LA.
Quests. One of Classcraft's most popular features, with over 100,000 lessons created by teachers and 3 million learning objectives completed by students so far, is now part of Classcraft's free offerings. In 2019, your students won't just be learning multiplication, chemistry, or any other content. They'll be saving the kingdom. Transform your lessons into adventures with Quests today. Visit classcraft.com for more information. All
right, welcome back to the podcast. This has been a crazy week in LA. They went. The LA teachers went on strike on Monday, Glenn.
Monday, yes, and they still are not back in the classrooms. And
Not
the
bad.
superintendent vowed to keep the schools open, and so they did. Though it's reported that a huge chunk of students are just not coming to school.
Yeah.
The ones that are, the reports are that they're hosting classes in big auditoriums and really not, not much is happening. I did see some principals and other non-teaching staff teaching classes, which that's actually very interesting to me because I would want to know what their experience was. Coming back into the classroom or whatever it might be. They were teaching, I saw several different classrooms, little kids, elementary school students, some high school classes that some administrators were teaching. So they said that they're finding administrators, of course, they're finding some substitutes that basically are crossing the picket lines. And then they're finding some volunteers to actually come into the school to be able to do some teaching to the students that are showing up. But it's definitely putting a hurt on them. And then I think it was Thursday, they decided to go ahead and start meeting again, Thursday evening. And then now it's basically negotiations are happening, but they're behind closed doors. Is that right?
I mean, it seems like they're meeting and they're talking at least, and they're trying to progress behind closed doors, but it doesn't look like they're getting really anywhere. Yeah, which is unfortunate. I mean, so I don't know what the game plan is for this, but I'll tell you though, the rallies, the pictures of the rallies that I'm seeing, and the protesting and whatever on the streets is pretty intense. There's lots of people out there rallying. So that seems like a positive thing, at least in the sense that the support seems strong still, is I guess what I'm saying.
Yes, lots of support, lots of teachers out there, even up until Thursday when they were going to meet. And I'm not sure if they went back out on Friday. I think they probably did. But yeah, those lines, I mean, the crazy shots from, the sky, as far as being able to see how big these crowds are, it's crazy. I mean, it's like I saw a little meme about it's bigger than Trump's inaugural address or whatever it might be. But yeah, no, I'm happy for them. I hope that they are able to reach a resolution that addresses many of these topics, especially the one that's the most concerning to me is that classroom size. If I was a parent, that's the one that would
unbelievable.
That would be the one that I would be the most concerned with. I mean, obviously, pay is important and benefits and those kinds of things, and to make sure that we have nurses and counselors and those types of things in the school. Those are great things to be able to strike for. But the classroom sizes at 45, at the high school and 35 in the elementary, no wonder our parents are sending their kids to alternative educational settings, these charter schools or these private schools or whatever it might be. And it's just lack of funding. I mean, they're not doing it because thing is just, that's the number game that they have to play. They have to put 35 kids per teacher in order to be able to fit it in within the budget. So I thought that that's the most concerning thing. And the thing that I hope that they really do address and do something about.
These giant classes are a huge problem. And I mean, any parent should be on board with their kid getting more attention from the teacher because the teacher's not teaching 45 kids or 40 kids. The max class size at the school I taught at was 24.
Wow. That's great.
And even that, I mean, when you are teaching something like computer science, where it really does involve a lot of you kind of getting around to the kids and trying to communicate with them and talk to them and see what they're doing on their screens. You can't, I mean, even with 24 kids, that's a lot. That's a lot of screens that you need to have, an eye on and be watching what they're doing and aware. So, I mean, these huge class sizes have got to go down. It's a major problem. I'll tell you, this is there's a new new governor in California, who's the next big thing, or at least one of the next big things. And, Eric Garcetti is a 2020 hopeful.
Yeah.
So for sure. He hasn't said it yet, but everyone knows. So huge test for these two guys that, do have a pretty big future, to lean on and try to get things done so they can say, that they didn't screw this up. This is a huge test for two fairly progressive dudes that need to show that they're not messing teachers around, because this is a big deal.
If I was them too, I would also want to address that class size issue. Number one, the two things that I was thinking about class sizes that are really detrimental or could be amazing for teaching. Here's what it is. Number one, the ability to form relationships with students. That's the first thing that we're taught, is that's how you're going to manage your classroom the best. That's how you're going to get them to buy into what you're doing. If you have 45 students in your class, that is extremely difficult / impossible to do, because that's 45 individual people that you're trying to form this kind of bonding relationship with, and make sure that they know that you're on their side, you're with them, and that you care about them. And then the second thing is, with really good teaching, you're going to give timely feedback, formative assessments, and those types of things. If you have 45 students per class, how are you going to?
It's almost impossible.
How are you going to do that? It's people are doing it right now, which is just amazing and awesome. But that's ridiculous to ask that of teachers. And how much more feedback can you give to less students? Of course, that's what you have to think of, is if you had 20 some students versus 40 some, I can actually work with my students to help them improve their abilities in my classroom. And we talk about that timely feedback on their work, and then help them progress towards whatever the standards that you're trying to achieve. If you can't, it's not that it's impossible, because they're doing it right now, but it's just crazy to think that I would have that many students in a class.
Isn't the nightmare being imagine being a brand new teacher, first year, in the inner areas, the downtown areas of LA, where there's inequality and lots of issues related to that and stuff like that. And then you're going into these giant 30, 40 student classes. That's a nightmare. That's an epic, brutal nightmare that I can't even imagine. You would be a superhuman teacher to make it through that and say that you felt like you did a good job and were super effective in that environment. Yeah. And
what's crazy is that that's what they were doing previous to the strike, and just saying, hey, we need to address this. That's really what their thing is. Our class sizes are ridiculous. How about we go ahead and address this? Let's put some money towards being able to hire more teachers. Let's spread out the numbers so that we're able to go ahead and do a better job. That's really what they want to do. It's just crazy. And hopefully they do reach a resolution, and that specific thing gets resolved, or at least addressed.
So we'll do our best to keep you posted this week on what goes on, and maybe you'll see one or two of our little OnEducation nows. When we come back, we're going to chat with Phil Stubbs. All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We're thrilled to be joined today by Phil Stubbs, who is the CEO of Verso. It's actually 6 a.m. in Australia where Phil is. So
wow.
He's a trooper, getting up early on Monday morning to talk to us. Welcome to the podcast, Phil.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Can you just give us a handle on you and your role, what you're doing at Verso, and tell us a little bit about your company, I guess?
Well, Verso is basically we're an organisation that's an education company. We've been working with schools the last probably 12 years. And in that time, we've developed structures and strategies for online and offline collaboration. So our platform, for want of a better word, is an environment where teachers can work with their students to build collaborative experiences that are designed as formative assessments that simultaneously give the teacher an indication of where the kids are at, but also allow the students to work together to move the learning forward. And around the online component, we've built a whole bank of offline collaborative structures that the students can use before, during, and after, because what's really important is that when students are using any kind of technology, that they have thinking time to collaborate, equitable structures that allow children to perform at their best when they come to the online component. And then once they've contributed online, then what do they do with that shared experience now? Where do they take that? How do they synthesize, analyze, compare, contrast? Where does that go? And what we've been doing as a company that is working with teachers to actually look at ways of reconnecting students with the learning, looking at using Verso not just as a collaborative learning tool, but also as a way of actually rethinking learning design and making the learning experience of students in the classroom intentional. And I think the intentional component is something we've put a lot of emphasis into this year, because what we're finding is teachers are using all kinds of applications on the fly, or even when they're planned to use them, they're not equipping students with the skills, the language, the structures to engage at the highest possible level when they come together. So Verso is really a way of being in the classroom, and we believe, sort of the James Britton quote, that learning floats in a sea of talk. And if you're going to build relationships in the classroom and shift relationships in the classroom between and amongst the students and the teacher, and change the relationship with knowledge, you really have to equip the students to take part, to find their voice, for all students then to be able to apply their voice in the right way at the right time. And an essential component of that we've really been working hard on this year, which is something that we're presenting at FETC, is the notion of driving that shift through the use of high-level vocabulary and using that vocabulary to design learning experiences, but to shift the needle in terms of the collaborative experience, in terms of lesson design, and in terms of the way we engage with and we engage the students with one another in the classroom.
So, Phil, I'm an instructional coach and for high school teachers, and you do a lot of work with teachers also. So what are some high-impact teaching strategies that we can share with our audience, who is mostly teachers, to go from that surface level to deep student learning? Okay, so the thing where a lot of people are getting it wrong is teachers are trying to go deep without sufficient surface. And there's a notion, particularly when you look at schools that are looking at things like PBL, the problems presented to the students before they've got sufficient knowledge to go deep. You can't go deep, and you can't connect dots until you've got the dots to connect. You've collected enough dots. So what we're working really hard on is building structures of the classroom that allow the students to collect the knowledge, and then where the online component comes in is in allowing the kids to engage with that knowledge, to take the deep dive and actually forge connections, that relational thinking. And then once they forge those connections, to actually engage with one another's thinking in really interesting and dynamic ways. And again, the key to that is the whole notion of teacher clarity, and planning for that level of engagement to happen. What I'm seeing in a lot of classrooms, all over the world, is teachers with good intent post a learning objective on the classroom board. They've planned for the kids to collaborate, but they haven't actually structured the collaboration in a way that's going to deliver what it is they had in mind at the start. So they haven't equipped students to take part. That deep dive won't happen automatically. You can want it and hope for it, but unless you intentionally plan for it to happen and you build structures for that to happen, it won't happen in the way that
the learning design has to be in place. We see a lot of teachers saying, "Oh, I'm going to get that." But I saw a lesson a few weeks ago where the students were talking about the notion of poverty, and they're having a powerful discussion in class, but it really wasn't collaborative. It wasn't equitable. Certain voices were being heard more than others. Other kids didn't feel they could take part, and at the end of it, the learning hadn't really progressed because the teacher hadn't planned and structured that conversation in a way that gave every kid a chance to find their voice, to apply their voice. And so when it came to actually the deep question that required some kind of pulling together of what we've learned, the majority of the students in the classroom couldn't do it because they just hadn't got what was required. They knew stuff, but not enough stuff to take the deep dive. So it's really we really as teachers have to think about that intentional component. Kids have to have conversation and engage with the dots in order then to take them deep. And I think we hope for it, but we don't always plan for it.
So we talk a lot about student voice and student choice in our class. I was a computer science teacher and had a really kind of free-flowing classroom where my students could really choose a lot of the direction. And you're talking a lot about. I also like that you're talking a lot about equity and equitable conversation. And this isn't. I'm going to merge kind of two of our questions together because I think you've hit on something really interesting here. And that's it. I mean, some teachers just don't necessarily know how to do that. How to get equitable conversation so that all of the students in the class are operating at the same level or a similar level of understanding about something like poverty, so that when it comes to that, did we hit this learning objective, you have students that are lower because they weren't equitably involved in the conversation. So if we're thinking about professional development, what are some ways that we can teach teachers how to make those types of experiences more equitable in the classroom, do you think?
Well, the first thing that teachers have to do to make that happen is go into a lesson with the premise that a lesson is not a lesson unless learning's moved forward for every student in the room. So when we're working with teachers, we put the proposition to them that think of yourself as a student. But so many classrooms, the students come in a room by themselves, they sit down at a desk by themselves, they engage at a certain level of the lesson, and then they leave. We've built structures around the lesson that in any given lesson, every student in the room should have the opportunity and should be required to work with every other student in that room. So you're not going to take learning forward until teachers start to think about the collaboration and the relationships they've got in the classroom. Every student in the room is a resource. So the collaborative structures we've built are basically, we call them recipe cards. They're 5-minute structures that you can take based on the stage of the lesson you're engaging with, whether that's engaging kids in recall, thinking about what they bring to the room, which we so often leave out. What do kids know already? And 40% of what we teach, kids already know something about. They've already touched on it. So value what the kids bring, but then plan for them to have an opportunity to surface that. Kids can't leave the room kids need to develop the mindset that I cannot learn in this classroom without hearing other voices, and my voice is important, is critical to every other student in this room. So they can't learn without me. And once you get that premise out of the way, in terms of your PD, teachers just get the idea that, collaboration is essential to every lesson. And, my students can't move from their first level of thinking unless they collaborate, because collaboration is where students move from their best to being better than their best. So many lessons, we talk to teachers before we get started with this and we survey them. They have a notion that the thing they want from the students is to come and do their best. Well, your best isn't good enough because you come in the room with your best. But it's through collaboration that kids leave better than their best. So what we don't try and do is take teachers away on a full day course about collaborative this and collaborative. We give them something they can do at points of need that they can try, have a go at, and then with Verso and the online component, they can evaluate the impact of that structure on student outcomes. Did it work? Because every conversation you have in terms of your own professional learning and the way you engage with students should be led by the word impact. So what was the impact of that collaborative structure on student learning? Did it make a difference? Did it shift the needle? In terms of, the learning goals, obviously, but also in terms of the way the students function and engage with one another and that equitable piece is so mission critical. Our Verso lesson structures I'm sharing at FETC require every student to leave the room having had time for individual thinking, small group thinking, whole class thinking, focus group with people who share the same opinion or Socratic groupings, and then returning to individual thinking and processing. So, once you get teachers across that line and rethinking what a lesson's all about and what learning intentions are about, then layering the professional learning on top of that becomes a lot easier.
Interesting. So speaking of FETC, I did scrolling through your Twitter account the other day, and you dropped a bit of a hint about how you dropped a little bit of a hint that you were going to tie your session to IKEA, and I won't lie. I'm sitting in a room. My office I am surrounded by IKEA nonsense in this room. Just it's like I'm so I can relate. Like literally, I mean, I have a couch, an IKEA couch. I have a desk. I have everything is IKEA in this room. So I was like, I wonder how he's going to do that, and I can see in some ways how learning could relate to IKEA. So without being too detailed in dropping your whole session on us, which we wouldn't have time for, I would love to just hear how you're tying your session to IKEA in particular. I'm super interested in this. This is like a teaser, folks, for Phil at FETC.
Well, look, IKEA is something we all get, and we've all struggled building that cabinet. I think the IKEA connection in terms of learning design is, the way we break down our standards into individual lessons, and we think about sharing the learning objective for every single lesson. So it's like when I get the IKEA stuff out of the box and those instructions with the little men and the little thing. So the first lesson is, I can put these pieces of wood together and I can put these holes together and done. Lesson 2, I can put these 4 pieces of wood together. Lesson 3, I can do this bit. But at no point, if I didn't know I was building a drawer pack, those lessons become massively more difficult. My understanding isn't going to come together unless I know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. What we often do as teachers is we don't give kids the picture on the lid of the box. We're building a bookcase. Instead of that, we give them, here's the first thing you do, here's the next thing, here's the third thing, here's the fourth thing, here's the fifth thing, and then magically hope at the end of it, we've built the drawer pack and all the drawers fit. What the IKEA moment is really allowing teachers to think, well, how can we share with our students what the end game is? What's the lid on the box? What's that picture look like? Because if we don't do that, then the students are just being compliant and building the bit we give them at the time we give it to them and not actually thinking ahead and thinking, well, I get why this bit's important because we're going to need that bit because this bit's going to fit inside it. We don't give them the opportunity to take ownership of the process. And so what I'm sharing at FETC is I've mashed together all of the language from Bloom's, whichever version of Bloom's you're into. I'm not really a fan of Bloom's, to be honest, but we'll go into that in FETC. Webb's depth of knowledge, solo taxonomy, and put the language together to allow the teacher to actually think about ways of sharing that journey in a more efficient way, thinking about cognitive load and the development of thinking throughout that process of building that IKEA unit. So the students, we build a common language around what it is that we're doing, and so kids can actually relate to that before, during, and throughout the lesson space. Because otherwise, kids are going in blind as to what it is they're actually doing and why it's important and why it matters, because they're not seeing the connections, and they can't forge connections between that bit they're building today, the next bit they build, the next bit they build, unless we give them the whole picture.
Awesome. Well, listen, it'll be really funny or not funny. It'll be super interesting to see you connect those dots at FETC, yeah. And we'll tell people Phil is going to be there, and he's going to tell you all about it, and maybe he'll bring some Allen keys for you to. Yeah,
I hope so.
Because lots of that's my pain point with IKEA stuff. Hey, Phil, thanks for joining us. It's been great to have you on, and yeah, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yep, absolute pleasure. And just one last word is we're actually, every strategy and structure and the vocabulary pieces, everything we share, FETC, participants in the session, they'll take that away with them. We're leaving them with all of those resources and access to the online tools. They get all of that because they can't move forward unless they've got it. So we're giving them the whole
Fantastic.
Story.
Yeah,
and we're gonna link the URL, and some info on Verso on the show notes as well, so people can take a look at it from there. Thanks so much, Phil, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to OnEducation. My name is Mike Washburn, and my co-host is Glen Irvin. Do you want to get in touch with us? Check out our website at oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Glenn is at Irv Spanish on Twitter. I can be found on Twitter at Mr. Washburn. Our engineers are Jake and Justin at Podcast Production Team. Check out their website at podcastproductionteam.com. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we'd be thrilled if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or the Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost, and this helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Schoology, for supporting us. Check out Schoology.com to learn how they can help you advance what's possible. Thanks as always for listening. Stay awesome. See you soon.